One. And come on, OBS. We are recording on Tuesday, September 16th, 2025 at 9:20 a.m. Eastern Time with Mr. Ian Burlingame. You guys can go to the description. You'll follow him on Twitter, YouTube, all that good shit. I think there's more in there. Whatever. Um, and I mean, we were just talking about cats, but I suppose kind of right back to I don't know. These are the thoughts of my obviously everything, Charlie Kirk later is just, horrific. And um but I've been thinking more and more about like I don't know, like a way it's helped me to diet over the years is understanding that like there's not something wrong with you that you get hungry every time you see a commercial for a Big Mac or a Reese's cup. Your human but the human body is modern society is the last trillionth of a percent of our existence. Your body thinks you're on the plains of the Serengeti. It needs every calorie. Okay. You're not you're not a bad or a gross person to be attracted to porn. Hey, more than your body wants food, it wants to pass on your DNA. Okay. Doesn't mean you can't enjoy those things, but it means like, hey, just know that you're not in the universe where you were just, that you evolved to be in. That's helped me. Uh, that's helped me a lot. And I think once I started to look at social media that way, and this isn't me harping on social media because, I also don't drink and don't smoke, not because I don't enjoy them enormously. It's because I'm very honest with myself and I know I can't handle them. That doesn't mean other people can't handle them. But what I've found is, I mean, I've always said it the last several years, every day, literally every day, I download Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat because I can upload the podcast directly through Spotify to them and it more traffic, more money. And then I delete them all. And I do that every single day because if I don't, I'll start scrolling. And after, not being on Twitter for several months now, I have kind of realized like, and then every once in a while I'll get back on. And I'm like, man, it sucks you in. And I'll stop talking in a second. It sucks you in. But I've been able to kind of wrap my head around it more once I started looking at it in the same way we view food or sex in the form of porn. Is like, yeah, you're not a bad person, you're not a normie for being sucked into it, but just understand that your brain also thinks, not only does it think that you're trying your hardest to get laid, and not only does it think that you're constantly starving, it also thinks you're in a village of like 12 people. And it is good that if it bleeds, it leads. You guys got to know if there's a tiger over. That is very good that that news passes 1,000 times faster than lukewarm news. Hey, I found a cool rock. That also applies to the LSD digital hallucination that is this portal in your pocket to go, and it's cool. You can see things everywhere, images, documentaries, videos, but you have to understand your body thinks that you are in a village. And every shooting, car accident, punching, screaming, bombing, boat crash, boat sink, space accident, your body doesn't, you look at it, you go, oh, that's in Russia. Your body thinks it's 8 feet away. Um, that has nothing to do, I don't think, with what we're talking about. But as you know, how I come into podcast, it's just what kind of whatever's on my mind, and then I don't know, push the ball downhill. So,
I want to know how the hell we got from cats to that.
well, we were talking about cats, saying how I wanted to. I don't know. Let's try to. And I was saying that whenever there's a big decision in my life, I try to wait at least a year, and
Yeah.
I go through some things I do, a better podcast computer or something. I'm like,
Uh,
yeah, okay. A year later, I'm like, that will actually improve the business for me retroactively, but been sober for a year and a half, and I go, yep, no, no, it's the right move. It's the right move. So how do we tie that in there? I don't know. Maybe it's you. I don't know. Maybe you don't take 2 days off and then say, yeah, it's bad. I don't know. Maybe take 6 months off and see where you stand. So
yeah.
I don't know.
No, everything you said is spot on correct and absolutely essential that we understand. Um, what we just witnessed last week in this horrendous assassination is the slipping of the game world into reality.
Hmm.
It was always coming because When an entire system and regime at every level and in every way is skewed against the only, is artificial and therefore skewed against men and particularly young men will be hurt. They'll do all the insane things that you say they got to do to have status in today's world. And then they'll realize that all they've done is destroy themselves. And then where do they get to? Well, let's play a game and make them hear us.
Yeah.
Because the only real asset and currency ever is the violence of young men. And we've all forgotten that. And so young men will make us hear it. And to them, it's just a game because they've done everything they were told to do to draw. I mean, look at this kid. Look at the stuff that's coming out about they did absolutely everything possible to gain status in today's world and realized that's not enough.
The Charlie Kirk assassin.
Yeah. Yeah.
What? Broad
Furries
show. Okay.
and trans girlfriend. And
I was
he's
gonna
like,
go.
I have to get over that. And right. It's like these
Oh,
kids did absolutely, they went absolutely insane in all the ways they were told to earn status and realized it's not enough. So we're going to have to up our game. And well, let's kill Charlie Kirk.
not quite on the same. Maybe very abstractly on the same line of thought. But yeah, I remember when I graduated college and then lost my brother to suicide.
Mhm.
These are not at all because I don't want this to sound like
Yeah.
victimizing
No, no,
myself
no.
at all.
I
But just as,
understand.
as an
You're trying
idea,
to,
but
yeah,
as an
you're trying
idea,
to,
it was
yeah.
like partied as a freshman in college in a frat, and then at 20 years old, I like made a more mature decision than I am now, where I was like, I really gotta stop doing this and I gotta start studying because after this, I gotta go to college, and it's gonna be a lot harder to go back to college in my late 20s, study nonstop, get into med school, great shape, staying sober, brain in good condition, going to bed early, doing all the right things, not fucking whores. I don't have kids all over the place. I was safe. I was investing in E-Trade at like age 16. I'm like doing everything right. Then I finished it, and even before my brother died, I was like, I don't, I'm miserable. And I did
Yeah.
it like, statistically, mathematically, like my MCAT, my scores. I'm like, I did it all.
Yeah.
And then losing a brother as well. But even without the losing the brother, I still felt empty. And I would imagine that those two combined, it took a while, but that was probably the genesis of this. Instead of going and shooting someone, but to me, it was still,
Correct.
I want to
Correct.
gamble. I want to go do something kind of crazy. And if I win, I want people to know I win.
Yeah.
And so
Well,
I
and
identify with that.
you have good, healthy parents who have some earned status in the world. Your mother by being a mother of, three boys and raising, and terribly sorry for the loss of your brother. I
Yeah.
lost both of mine, not to suicide, but in the way, drugs and violence.
Not a normal loss.
Not a normal life. And, there's there, but the grace of chance go I, right?
Yeah.
For most of us. But the point being, I've been thinking about this a lot, and some things really clicked in yesterday because I some little pieces were sent to me, etc. Although nobody had putting it together, it was just little informational pieces. But these young men they had driven themselves to all the insanities that we're told the young men have to do. They had twisted and contorted themselves in all the ways they were told to have status in the world, and it wasn't enough. And so, what does that do as somebody's, I'm going to say it this way, people can get angry if they want, but anybody that was younger, and I'm not going to lie, it's happened to me probably once or twice when I was young man trying to pursue some attractive girl because I've always liked the really skinny, pretty ones for some reason. The mean, cruel ones. That's what I'm getting at. Yeah.
Toxic masculinity.
Right.
I can't even.
And yeah,
Can't
toxic.
even.
I'm toxic. Yeah. So toxic, burned all my hair off.
Yeah.
Um,
Or as Dale says, I'm so toxic, I'm fucking radioactive.
right. Yeah. So,
Jumping through
there
all
have
the
been a
hoops,
couple.
doing all the things to get the approval.
Yeah. No. Well, and that's exactly it. There's a couple times I've crossed in my life. And not even when I was young, but even probably in my 20s. I think it's the last time. But you find an attraction to some girl and you pursue her and leads you on and plays along and gives you and she's just playing a game. She's being cruel. I've watched it, from San Francisco. I've watched gay guys do it too, right? To other gay guys, just play along, play, and then just pull the rug out and just hurt them, just cruel, right? That's what happens when that you get mad. You get real mad. So what happens when that's happening at the level of society?
Mm.
And a young man's twisting and contorting himself in all these ways to be attractive and to be seen and recognized as somebody in society. And it's not enough. And at some point, he realizes, I'm just being played. But I'm too deep into it now. I've already ruined my life. I've already been a whatever, furry or a trans or a whatever for, there's no going back now. There's no redemption path for that. Everybody hates, so I might as well go all the way in. Well, what's next? Well, let's kill some of these motherfuckers that did this to us.
Mm. Even if it's they didn't do it to us, if your perception is that,
Or that, you know, if your perception isn't necessarily they did it to you, but they're against you,
yeah, it's not. Yeah,
right?
it's that this isn't us
In this
defending
case,
it, but
right?
I mean
Yeah.
abstractly, no, like
Yeah.
I understand it, like an abstraction of like, yeah, I understand it. I understand blowing yourself up in a crowded market in Germany, not because it's right, but because if you grew up and you've never seen a TV or running water, and your dad and your dad and your dad are all saying the white man's, trying to stop us from reaching our law. Yeah, abstractly, I get it.
Yeah. And you got nothing else.
Yeah.
Right? So the thing is people need to understand that young men are driven in every form or fashion to earn status in their tribe, in society. And very much to what you were saying, right? We're still wired for communities of 150 or less,
Yeah.
right? The whole community. And so, and why are young men wired at the basis level all the way up to earn status? Well, because women are driven by hypergamy. Women are only attracted to males of status. So young men are wired to earn status. Well, when you have a twisted, warped, contorted society of all these artificial status hierarchies, and these young men warp and twist and contort themselves to earn status and then find out it's fake and it's not real and it's in fact done nothing but reduce or completely remove their ability to earn status in what world? Because men have to earn status in the world of men.
Yeah.
Women have to earn status in the world of women. Those are two different worlds. And you can't cross across and earn status in the other and actually have that be legitimate, real status. This is why we're seeing all these women now that are in their, getting past fertility, well past fertility, and they're single and alone and no kids and cats and boxed wine and Xanax. And, you know, I say that so much, I don't say it with glee and I don't say it with
No, it's
joy
it's what
because
it's what it is.
as a man, as a healthy man who has earned status, hard-earned status, in the world of man, I see what's happened to women, and it crushes me because
There's
what
no
the
there's
hell
no
have we
joy
been
in
do?
seeing a single woman in her 40s who are
No,
I don't there's
no,
no
that's like,
slam dunk. I look at that the same way I look at, somebody whose wife dies.
yeah, no,
That man, fuck.
what are all the things that we in this world of man failed in that shit's happening on that scale? Now, again, that's the world of women. They're the ones who set status high. They're women are the ones who set the incentive structures that determine status structures, status hierarchies. And that's all skewed and twisted and contorted. And men had very little to nothing to do with that. But it's still a massive, massive failure on many levels. And these young men that, just and this horrendous thing that's happened. There's a reason, and I almost guarantee I can't, but I almost guarantee there was other assets and entities in there that were egging them on and giving them little right. Because what are
Kirk,
they doing? They're playing an arc.
are we
Are
talking
you
about Kirk
familiar with
specific
arcs?
are we playing about Kirk specifically
Yeah,
or
yeah,
okay.
specifically. Okay. Because this is a bigger, far bigger problem that all the OSINT guys and the intel guys and law enforcement, none of them are looking at it. An ARG is an alternate reality game. They're brilliant. Some of them have been going on for a decade or more, and they blend online digital stuff with real world. And they are brilliant. Some of them are ludicrously sophisticated and capable. And that's what these kids are playing, these youngsters are playing. These two resentful factions are playing an alternate reality game. And now that the plateaus in, because you never win an alternate reality game, right? It's an infinite game you're playing, but there's these little, events that occur that you can build to if you follow the right threads and the right gossamers and the right little tips and tricks and all the stuff, right? Um, kind of like for the old timers, the old treasure hunts.
Sure.
Right. And then that leads you to some event or to some location where you get more information. And then the next thing leads you there. And then there's some event that occurs and
That
that gives
happened.
you the highest status in the game for now, because that's not the end of the game.
Yeah.
Right.
And you're saying that is influential.
That's what this is they're coming out now. Stuffs are coming out about the symbols and the this and the that and the messaging and all of that. What's happened is somebody is running an artificial reality game and they're using these kids as assassins, as killers, because they're all disposable. And this is the LGBTQ trans community was always the community of violent asset they were going to build up and then burn first
Well, yeah, you always
because
kill
it's
the
insanity.
revolutionaries. Well, you always kill the
Yeah,
revolutionaries because
yeah,
they're the ones that have shown that they're willing and able to
correct,
do things. So they're
correct,
a danger to you once you get in.
correct. So what we have to understand is, young men have had enough,
I'm gonna pull
and
up a
young men
comment. Sorry,
will,
I'm not pulling up
yeah.
a comment from the show yesterday. I don't want you to
Young
tell me
men will
on.
force themselves to be heard.
Somebody
And that's
commented,
a fact and it's ancient. And the only way young men can force themselves to be heard is through killing.
where is it? Somebody made a comment on the show yesterday. Who the fuck is it? Hold on. It was
That's
Bert.
why they had to take out the moderate, right? Because Kirk would have been able to argue and articulate and find ways to, you know, back us off, back young men, at least enough of the young men off this precipice.
Well, damn it. Well, somebody had a great. I don't know where it. How the fuck do I? This is driving me insane. They made a comment about you can almost imagine that. I think my reply was it's almost like an Amazon marketplace. But they made a comment, and it was just like even with like the declassified dragnet surveillance of like 2002. We're not even talking into I wonder what the government just provable things that are now old, right?
Yeah.
XQ score, Echelon, Stellar Wind.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
You have every Discord, every video game, and if you map it all, even with rudimentary AI, there's probably a catalog of patsies.
Yes.
And I thought that I just like I always yeah, of course there are but I never even thought about like oh
Oh, that
why limit ourselves? This isn't Gen 1. This isn't Mark 1 Patsy Oswald. No, no,
no,
no,
we're
no.
at the
We've evolved. Who do you
we're
want them
Gen
to be?
5
Yeah,
now,
who do you want
right?
them to be?
Yeah.
What opinions do you? And we by the way, we can tack on some tertiary or secondary and tertiary effects. We can get at your
Yes.
prime target. We can also demonize this group and we can
Yeah.
yeah, there probably is like maybe it's
Yes.
not as, official as Patsy Marketplace, but there's probably some standard
They're
operating procedure.
they're playing. So what's happening is the intelligence communities, the Devil's Legions, are playing an alternate reality game. This is what fifth generation warfare really is. It's a game that blends online and offline life into a single whole. It blends all these things together, and all you need is a capable game runner. And now we've just seen how sophisticated the game is.
How important, and I don't even necessarily agree with this line of thought because I believe it leads to censorship. And the reason above all else that I've ever hated censorship is for the following. Somebody goes, this show needs to be censored. You talk about ivermectin. and people are taking ivermectin and not the vaccine, and therefore they're dying. Okay. Well, sir, did I trick you into taking ivermectin and now you're sick? No, 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 no. How come I didn't trick you? Well, it's not through your bullshit. Other people can't. Well, now we are saying, let's say, and even that is true. Let's say I really am doing that and it really is resulting in people dying. As soon as somebody says, I didn't fall for your bullshit, and they're not some Mensa 550 IQ, they're admitting that the peons can't think for themselves. And to me, that's way more dangerous than any even legit misinformation. All right. So that as a preface. And it's been thrown around for years. At what point do you not plaster their face all over social media? At what point do you take away that reward aspect? They're all going to know my fucking name. They're all going to, I mean, you can say it right now, and most people, without even thinking it, Adam Lanza, Sandy Hook, Dylan Klebold, Eric Harris, Columbine. We know these names, whether we want to or not.
S-
At what
s-
point do you prod and go, if we keep perpetuating these things? As
It's
and every
status.
yeah, and every year
Yeah.
we're online
Yeah.
more and more. These guys are becoming fucking like an Elvis Presley overnight. At what point,
Correct.
as a video
Correct.
game, do you
Correct.
take out the leaderboard so people stop? That's like the best thing about a video. I don't care if I
Yeah.
won. I want to know how I'm do. Oh, I fucking beat all of you. I beat all of you. You
If
get to put,
you
put your name in the top thing on the arcade game.
if you
TPC.
can't earn status in healthy status hierarchies, healthy, I hate the word good, bad, etc., but you know, if you can't earn status in healthy organic world, you're gonna earn status in the violent, you know, if you can't do the good and earn status, you're going to do the bad as far as you can and earn status in that world because it's the only status available to you. Now, I went to the comment, the where you were getting to, and terribly sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, dude, I don't fucking. That's
Historically, these people's names were wiped from history on purpose.
okay.
They were, and sometimes all record or history of them was wiped
But is that
on
good?
purpose.
Is that actually good?
Yes,
Okay. Well,
yes,
yeah, I would
because
say no, it's not. I don't think any of that's good, but why is it good?
Well, because of the very reason that you're getting to, right? So when I was writing, getting ready to write The Eternal War back 5, 6 years ago, I studied serial killers for a while. Um, they have a ranking system amongst themselves,
And what?
a ranking system.
Adam Lanza, I was just reading about him last week, had the and it's and sorry for interrupt. All the show
No,
ever
it's all good. No,
is
no,
yeah,
no,
I was gonna
no,
say all the show ever is me being 15 minutes late and interrupting. That's all the show is. Everything else is Mad Libs. I was reading about Adam Lanza
and
last week.
bladder breaks.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
bladder breaks. Yeah, and I was reading about Adam Lanza last week, and apparently he had a massive, like those biochemical pathway posters.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Those are
yeah.
awesome. He had one of those that he had handwritten about a history of serial killers, spree killers, multiple killers, shooters, famous assassins, mass shooters, the whole gambit, as well as the number of people they got and the rank of those people. He
Yeah,
said it had to have taken him at least like 3,000 hours. There's 8,000 hours in a year to build this. He was
yeah.
he was ranking them.
Yeah, that's the thing. Resentfuls and malevolent individuals have their own status hierarchies.
Sorry, history, wiping him.
Yeah, well, historically, that's how you reduce, you're never going to do away with evil. You're never going to do away with malevolence. It just doesn't happen. It's always going to come up. Um, One of the ways in which you reduce the likelihood for at least borderline people to go into malevolence as a way to earn status is you deny as much of that information as that guy put on his board as possible. Now, there's a line there that you have to be careful of where you don't just hide things and then leave people vulnerable
And that's where
because
I'm
you
at.
haven't liquidated the threat, right? And unfortunately, that happens far more than people realize. It's why serial killers have so much free reign to operate, is because law enforcement, can't figure it out, can't, solve the problem because we live in too large of communities and everybody's distracted away to larger abstractions they get fuck all to do with. And so what do? They hide it. So that's not what I'm talking about. And there you got to be careful. But you need to be able to deny and, you know, the ability for someone who's driven and motivated that way, wherever the hell that comes from, and bleeding hearts can say whatever they want to, but we see that a lot of these people, a lot of them are born that way. It's just how they are. Um, Give me a second. You see it in animal species too, right? So it's not just humans, and they get shunned and they get kicked out or they get killed early on. Um, but the point being is that you want to reduce and limit down the malevolence, resentful's ability to have a status hierarchy structure for doing malevolence. And I'm going to give you an example of, something that we're not going to be able to wipe from history, and we probably shouldn't, but we have three resentfuls who have set the bar for malevolent bureaucratic government people: Hitler, Stalin, and Mao. And there's some others in smaller, Pol Pot and others in much smaller populations and countries that were even, proportionally way worse than even those three. So, resentfuls and malevolence are a part of our society, and they have their own status hierarchies. And their status hierarchies, like the serial killers, is how many people they get murdered, how many people's lives they destroy, how many young men they drive like this to insanity and then murder in their own ruin. There are bureaucrats and people at some NGOs and the intelligence community and some oligarchs that are keeping score. See? See, we did that. That's all. See, I move up. That was my operation. I funded that. I move up on this status hierarchy.
Hmm.
You
Yeah,
gotta,
I mean, famed Nazi commando Otto Skorzeny, right? I mean, he went and worked for the Mossad after World War II, and he was a Hitler's top guy. And I think the quote of when he went and killed the first kill he did for the Mossad. I mean, it's almost. When I remember reading about this, I was just like, yeah, it's a dude who's. I was trying to be somewhat like open-minded. I'm like, that's a guy that was fighting for the country that he grew up in, and it's easy to retroactively say Nazi Germany bad, but this guy is probably an EM or a Dale who's just, going and doing the thing. But the quote from him is he goes out and he kills this dude in the woods after driving him out there. And his exact quote is, well, he smiled and he goes, I think he said, what a glee it is to kill again. And you're like, oh, well, that guy, okay, hold on. I don't think that's just a dude fighting for his, that's an animal. Okay, extrapolate.
yeah, they have their own status hierarchies, right? And we need to accept that. And so what just happened? This, this, what has happened is that for the last, and it started in my generation, this stuff was already working its way into schools and the social welfare system and all that stuff when I was in school. By the time I was in middle school, I don't remember it so much in elementary school. And I went to, off and on with private schools, right? But this stuff was already working its way in there. This, heavy anti-male stuff, heavy anti-young male stuff, all this, you know, young men or this, and this was already started when I was young. And it only got vastly worse. I can't imagine your generation. I watched him. I have a younger brother through my adopted family who's 20 years younger than me. I watched it with him. I watched him have almost a psychological breakdown at 7 years of age because of what was being told and taught, and then what he was seeing, etc. He came to his older brother, and we had a conversation, and unfortunately, he didn't go down that path. But a couple of his friends did have, psychological breakdowns in their ages 7, 8 years old because of all the shit that was being sold to them. And he's your age. He's in his mid 30s now, late 30s. Um, it's only gotten worse. So what the hell was going to happen with these young men? What do we think was going to happen? At some point, They were going to have done all the things necessary to drive themselves as insane as possible and still realize there's no status for them, no real status. And they got no stake and no, and now they've done all these things that they're never going to earn status in the world of man. So we might as well burn it all down. But if we're going to burn it all down, burning it, burning the streets in, some inner city doesn't get attention, doesn't really get attention, doesn't change anything. So we're smarter than that. We're more clever than that. Let's do some targeted assassinations of some real people.
Hmm.
Let's make them hear us.
Make them heroes or make us me the
Make the
assassin.
rest of us hear them, right?
Oh,
Make the
oh, oh, here.
people
I thought you
who,
said heroes.
no, 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 no.
Make them
Well,
heroes. Well, that too, in a
the
way.
honest
You're
truth is, the honest truth is when people get into this psychological state, they don't even think in terms of heroes and villains and all
no,
of
no,
that.
no.
No, it's just you're going to hear me.
Yeah.
I am going to make you hear me. And yes, there's little rewards and all of that. And then there's unfortunately the malevolent manipulators around who do promote and do, et cetera, et cetera. So, they do get the dopamine, norepinephrine, serotonin rewards, but this is where we are, and where we are is we have very, that's one thing. First off, young men are brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I there was an article in Wired magazine 25 years or so ago when the whole console video game thing was taking off, and everybody was like, "Oh, kids are going to get dumber and antisocial," and realized that a kid that played 4 hours of video games a week had a J score, which is a composite intelligence score that was 35% higher than his peers.
Oh,
And
there's like a double digit percentage increase in whatever metric accuracy is for surgeons who'd play
yeah,
mouse and
yeah.
keyboard games.
Because, well, think about what's happening is you are doing complex computational mathematics without having to know the formulas. You're actually having to do it. You're having to actually do complex physics without having to know the formulas. What you're doing, you are right hemisphere training your brain, right and left hemisphere training your brain how to do these complex things without the need to go through the school and all this other stuff. But these kids are brilliant. They're insane because they've done all the things since they were a little child to try and earn the approval of the women around them, right? And the more they did that, the less healthy men around them wanted anything to do with them, healthy males. And the oligarchs are locked in an all-out oligarch war, right? Which is now gone hot with a leading assassination on broad daylight and TV.
And an attempt
So,
last year,
and attempts last year, and
and then
there's other people being killed around the world,
the CEO
right?
last year, and then uh yeah, no, these aren't
Yeah,
they are happening at a faster and faster rate.
correct. Correct. And now they took out the moderate,
Yeah,
and they did that on purpose. So, I'm
yeah, it's the terp. They took out the terp. You would do that if you didn't want any communication, and instead you just wanted the two factions to fucking kill each other.
correct. That's burning your longboats.
You snip the red phone between Moscow and DC.
That's exactly it.
It's not a good move if you are in one of those camps. It's a great move if you want those camps to fucking kill each other.
So generally what you do in these types of when the oligarch war starts to spill over out of the halls of power and finance and law and all that other stuff, the first thing that happens is they use crazies to do targeted assassinations to try and hurt each other's camps, the factional conflict. And you burn the crazies because, for what we were articulating about earlier, you burn them. You get as much out of them as you can, as much assassinations, killing, etc., and then you burn them because you're worried about them coming for you because they're nihilist, because you forced them to it, right? You've driven them insane since they were children and put them in a position where they're young men, and the only thing they actually have is the ability to murder. Because down underneath, that is the only real asset. That's what we're getting to right now, right? That we're having this global financial collapse because of this, Ponzi scheme that we've been running for 400 years. And so what are the oligarchs really fighting over? Who gets what hard assets that's going to be collateral for the new system? That's what the oligarchs are really fighting out. And well, what is the only real asset? The only tangible baseline asset from which everything else is derivative, including the land, is the violence of young men. So some oligarchs just use that hard asset to go kill somebody on the other camp, on the other side. The person who was doing what? Teaching young men how to be moderate but capable. They just took
And
that guy out.
and I never watched him, not because, and I also need a
I didn't even really know who he was, to be quite
no,
frank.
and I will say this is and now that I've listened to him more in the last week than I ever did times a trillion. One, I kind of feel bad. I always used to make fun of him just because I thought he was a dork. And now I look at it and I'm like, he's a well-dressed dude. He wasn't afraid of his faith. And I'm like, that's not dorky. That's my
Yeah,
things about this podcast is
yeah, yeah,
I'm willing to be vulnerable and willing to stand up for my beliefs. And then my point is so I was about to make fun of Tim Pool, but I realized I know nothing about him. And if he died today, I'd probably go back and listen to him and go, oh, it wasn't that bad. So maybe I'm just trying to stop being such a fucking douchebag. That being said, is I clicked on Tim Pool last night. It was on the front page of Rumble, as it often is, and I tried to make one good point, and he goes, Milo went on his cross country tours, and sure he was there to debate and blah blah blah. They're like, and there's nothing wrong with it, but he was snarky. He'd snap back. He'd slam dunk them. They're like, you never saw that with Charlie. He would always
yeah,
smile and agree to
yeah.
disagree and, point out why this is that and this is this.
Yes.
And then he would always finish it with like, hey, God bless and find Jesus, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's not a crazy person.
No.
That is the link in between.
Yes.
The, and yeah, now I feel like an asshole for making fun of him, but I mean, no, that is a link. That was, I'd say more than it was is like I don't know, a middle space. I look at it more as like, no, it was a link in a chain that was keeping the left pillar and the right pillar from collapsing.
Correct. He was the moderate.
Yeah.
And it would have been through Charlie Kirk and his work with young men that a path of redemption for these young men who've been radicalized could have been found. Now
So I,
there's no path back for them. Charlie Kirk was the type of character, and people can get angry or whatever, but he was the Martin Luther King kind of character of our time. And
no
he could have
violence,
helped.
well dressed, it's well
Correct.
spoken,
Correct.
doesn't swear like an
Never
idiot like
yelled
me.
back, never, right? Never got personal, never called them names, never. He was the potential path of redemption back. And now he's gone. And now what are the radicalized young men? That's one side, right? Now the radicalized young men have no path back. Why? Because we hate them. Now we don't just look down on them. Now we know we need to fear them and hate them and hunt them. Okay, well, that's driven them into a position now. And I'm not saying that's not wrong. They just assassinated Charlie Kirk on live TV, right? Okay. The other side of it, though, is that this happens in history right before the move to radicalize young men to a great slaughter
Mm,
occurs. Because now there isn't also the moderate voice for the young men that haven't driven themselves insane, but are still in the same position where nobody's listening to them, nobody gives a damn about them, everything's skewed against them, and they're open to be radicalized in other ways, such as ethnic radicalization,
Hmm.
ethnic warfare, ethnic conflict. It's no accident that Irina's video came out just days before the Kirk assassination.
Oh yeah.
No accident. And no accident, these other things. And then there's the whole anti-Jew thing that popped up on Friday and Saturday. Somebody put $500 million
What was
into
that?
that. Oh, it was that the Jews were involved in Charlie Kirk's killing.
Of
It
course.
was all over for about 25, 27 hours. Somebody put $500 million into a social media blitz to do that. And by Sunday, and I said it Friday, I think, that they're going to start changing the investment money somewhere around Sunday, and that's exactly what happened. And they, tamp down the anti-Jew thing, right? And now it's all fun. And some idiots are still, but point being is this: the intention right now in this oligarchic war is to kill off the young men in a great conflagration. That is the pattern. When you are worried about young men, you kill them in a war. That's what this whole WW3 thing was about. Well, now they just took out the moderate who was actually talking about why are we supporting Israel in the fight in the Middle East? Why did we hit Iran? What
Mm.
are we doing in Ukraine? He was a moderate and he connected with young men, and particularly the young men that they now want to radicalize. The young men that they could drive insane, they've already done that. And now the disgust mechanism of society has risen so much, they're not going to be able to do that anymore. So now what they need to do is radicalize young men along disgust pathways. I am disgusted with that. This is what got 5 to 7 million young German men killed last century. Disgust.
You got JD
And
Vance saying yesterday, right? We can't have unity with the and I'm sorry, I voted for Trump and Vance. And I get it. I totally get the knee-jerk reaction of going, good, tell them to fuck. Like I totally understand that. But that's also what good bait does.
yes,
You know, they want you to be angry. You go, what
yes,
fucking them angry? It's like I get that. But if you do know that they want you to be angry, you have to be aware of that. They
because
insulted you. They insulted your mom because they want you to punch them, so you get thrown off the basketball court. I know they
correct.
did that, and I don't give a fuck. It's like, no, 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 hold on. If you know they did that, I'm not. I don't doubt that you're angry and you want to knock his fucking teeth out. But you're open to saying that maybe they're baiting you. Well, why are they baiting you? And it's
Well, here's the problem. Okay, this gets back to what you and I were talking about bar fight, because that's really what this is. We're in a global fucking bar fight. And it ain't gone to, everyone on everyone yet. Yet. Okay. But there is a certain point where even if they are baiting you as a man, you got to knock them the fuck out. Because if you do not, you end up with a society. So this is Clausewitz's statement. Now I paraphrase, etc. But Clausewitz, the great military, historian and thinker, 200 years ago, articulated that wars are what happens
war is
when
an extension of
civility
politics.
becomes the norm.
Yeah. Well, war is the extension of
When
politics.
restraint, right, to what you're saying, okay, there's a provocation being thrown in my face and I don't respond to that lower level provocation. Ultimately, what you wind up with is societies where you just have blue haired, cunt hat wearing bitches yelling and screaming and spittle in men's faces. Guess what? That can't be allowed because what it leads to is ultimately a reaction because if you don't react, your community dies,
The
literally,
the compounded interest of your reaction.
right?
You
So what
should have dealt
Clausewitz
with it
said is
earlier.
that wars are what emerges when civility becomes the required standard. It's inevitable. And what could have been low level violence, surgical, targeted, precise, low level violence to reset now is slaughter. Young men fighting young men on fields of battle and dying in great numbers. Whereas if we just punch that bitch in the face, and if the system or structure, punishes the young man for doing that or young woman for doing it, like has happened to my daughter who was defending kids when she was young, then other parts of that community should come and make sure that that young person, the person who stood up for right is okay, that they're not financially ruined, that they're not shunned from the community. And yes, you're going to get some blowback for that too. Fine. But it's better that we have this low level conflict and violence than we lead to slaughter like just happened in Ukraine, where they're done. Ukraine is done. It's lost roughly 2 million young men. There is no Ukraine anymore demographically. Within a couple generations, it's gone.
Plug your stuff. My dryer just turned off, and it's
Okay.
gonna be beeping nonstop, and so I'm also
Yeah.
this anyway. So
Drive you insane.
take it away.
Yeah. So emburlingame.substack.com, essays, serialized novel, Azarone Burns, which goes into a lot of things, concepts and ideas. I'm going to write about this actually in one of the chapters here now. Books on Amazon. The Eternal War is a good read for all of this. Very essential, actually, because unknowingly 5 years ago I wrote in the playbook. Um, the latest one, The Financialist Kill Chain. Financialist Kill Chain is another good one because it articulates the oligarchs and the oligarch fight and what that all is. And then, of course, Twitter, EM Burlingame on Twitter. I have a Facebook, but I rarely use it. That's probably the best ways. I do have a new book coming out oriented to young men. It'll be out later this week. It's called A Modern Knight's Guidebook. It's about how young men can develop themselves and earn status in the world of man without having to do all this insane stuff and go down all these insane pathways. It'll be out, I don't know, probably by Friday.
How does that parallel the Clausewitz? How does that par is it parallel or is it opposite of Kennedy? It's those who make peaceful what? Those who make peaceful
Peaceful revolution impossible, make
make
violent
violent
revolution inevitable.
inevitable. Is
Yeah,
are
so
those
no,
saying
it's
the
it's
same
in
things or are those
support. It's the
opposite?
same
Okay.
thing. It's the same thing, right? So if you can't allow for the modest violence in your, doesn't necessarily need to be violent violence, but if you cannot allow for uncivil discourse that's necessary to break through, you know, malevolence to get to some, to talk real, that motherfucker's doing that. And that is fucking wrong. And it is harming people in this fucking way. And if you can't talk that way and say that, you've got to say everything under the careful, guarded, polite, nice, everybody understand, the consensus narrative. You're never going to fix that problem. And in fact, it only gets worse and worse and worse. And others look at that and go, oh, we're protected under the shield of civility. And as long as we keep it just below the threshold where somebody's going to shoot us in the face, we're good. What winds up happening is all of your society becomes malevolence. So Kennedy was saying the same thing in his own way, right? You have to allow for conflict. You have to allow for incivility to speak truth. And people get upset and people get hurt. And normally the people who most get hurt are the ones doing malevolent shit. And you got to be able to pop people in the mouth. Like my generation was one of the last generations. You said something on the playground as a kid, and that was not cool. You got popped. And guess what? That shock, physical, neural, biophysiological, neurological shock to your body was literally ripped right through your whole body. You're like, yeah, I'm not going to do that again. I'm not going to say that kind of thing again. That's how you learned,
Mm.
right? You take that away, that biophysiologically neurological shock to the system that's like, whoo, right? That computational space, it's like, yeah, I'm not going to get down that pathway again because that hurts. More importantly, it's not just that it hurts. Generally, what would happen is the kid that punched you is a kid you wanted to be friends with. Was probably a little bit older kid, had a little bit more going on, a little bit more experience. Other kids respected him. And you probably wanted, you know, friendship with that kid and you just cost yourself there. You're going to have to now, not only did you have to take a physical punch, now you got to go prove yourself, and which is way harder and way more complicated and way more difficult to earn that kid's respect and trust. Again, it's like the bar fights, right? I've had guys that come in, younger guy, well, I was a younger guy too, but I had guys come in, they were drunk, they're being belligerent, they're being stupid, and I'd either grab, lock them up and drag them out, take them outside, and we'd fight outside, or sometimes they have to fight right inside the bar. S- Some of those guys, unless they went too far, what do you say? Sober up, go home, come back next weekend. And what do? The next weekend you watch and you look. And sometimes they get belligerent, stupid again. You kick them out and they're done. Right? It's like, yeah, don't come back. But there was other guys that you did that, and the way in which you handled it, maybe you stood toe to toe with them, or maybe you got him outside and toe to toe with him respectfully outside, or got him in, you found a way to get him outside where there wasn't too much of a loss of face for him. And they got outside, and then you had to start, conversation, and it was all backed up with, I'll throw down right now if I need to. And some of those guys learned, some of those guys needed that. And they come back and it never happened again. They were cool,
Mm.
right? So where we are is that, and the crazies on one side, but where they want to go now is they want to radicalize young. This is why they killed Charlie Kirk. They want to radicalize our young men around disgust and then lead them to a great slaughter that's unwinnable, and they'll never support or back them enough, just like what we just did in Ukraine. No air support. You're not going to win a modern war without air support and all the, full on military support. They were never meant to win. They were meant to be slaughtered, right? Because the Europeans and the American neocons that were behind it consider Ukrainians Russians. They're Slavs. They're all the enemy. And if you're going to move against Russia, you got to take out the Ukrainians first, because they had a couple million young men that could have, or men that could have fought on the Russian side. So we have, because we have only allowed civility for 80 years, 70, 80 years, a bloodbath's coming. Potential for a bloodbath is coming. And that's what the oligarchs, the resentful oligarchs want and need, because they need the young men dead and off the land so they can take the land as collateral for their financial Ponzi scheme. It's that simple. It's not more complex than that. Now, how it plays out and how the oligarchs do it in fifth gen war and fourth gen war and third gen war and hormones and all this other ludicrous complex stuff, that's on top of what the underlying principle and requirement is that's always been the same. The only currency of a people is violence of young men. And the only asset of a people is young men, and men writ large, willing and capable to stand on a piece of land and deny somebody else from taking possession of it. Everything else is artificial and derivative. And these young men, crazy and insane as they are, just proved that in Utah.
I don't know if I said it with you last, I don't remember, but my favorite comedian at this point, I like, is a philosopher. He's a philosopher poet. It's Tim Dillon. Um, but
Yeah.
he said last week or a week before, he was like, what you need is, he's like, what Long Island needs is where he grew up. So you got these roided out Italian dudes, 18 to 30, just, juiced to the tits on testosterone, natural or other. He's like, what they need is they need to get into a decent town car, and they need to drive to a physical location that is not their home 5 days a
Yeah,
week.
you
They need
said
to
it.
go into an
Yeah.
office space, and they need to do work.
Yeah.
You can call it the economy if you want,
Yeah.
but what it is it's a fidget spinner, because otherwise they turn very quickly into warlords. Okay, I'm just
Or these insanely violent, like just happened, that just
sure,
did
sure, but
this.
just
Yeah, 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 yeah.
in general,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Yeah.
The gas fills the volume it's given.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
and this is just what you're saying about, leading him to the slaughter. is, I get the nation state point of view. It's evil, but I mean, I totally get it. It's war. It's to win. And do you think that there could be, and this might be too out there, it's like, well, how, well, why stop the economy thing? If that occupied people, could it be that, as you and I think Luongo talk about, right, the great like restructuring, the final theft, could it also be just with not even AI in the sense of ascension? No, no, but just, I mean, the inevitable slide into automation. Is this something where they're looking 10 years ahead and go, the whole daycare of an office job is no longer going to cut it. Let's get ahead of this and go back to the tried and true method. Or is
So
it that, or is it forget the whole
there's factionality.
automation? Is it just no, we're doing what we've always done. Forget
Y-
automation.
Yeah, so there's factions, right? So the factions, oligarch factions, are all competing. Some have that as their orientation. Some have theft of the land as, the assets as an orientation. Um, some have the belief that we can transition from this fiat system into a crypto system and keep the whole thing going. The, some think that we need to, it just all kinds of different factions are competing with one another. There's cold, hard realities, however, that haven't changed. And the cold, hard realities are this: the only real asset of a land is the young men capable, and men, not just young men, but men willing and capable to stand and fight for the land to prevent somebody from taking it and anything that can be done with or on that land. The only currency, therefore, is physical violence. That's it. Those are it. We are rapidly approaching population collapse. And it's a scary thing when people really look at population collapses and what happens. One of the things that instinctually happens in animal species once their population, you can see it in wolves, you can see it in lions, you can see it in, right? When their population, their pack, their tribe, or whatever reduces, they reorient themselves back towards the physical prowess and capabilities of young men, the males, to commit violence and to hunt and to provide, etc. But what they also do is their borders reshape themselves back to what are defensible with smaller populations.
Hmm.
And when we look at the whole collapse of globalism and everything else that's happening and the reshaping of borders and all of that, what's really happening down underneath all this other factional bullshit that's happening on top is the world is reorienting back to the violence of young men and to the geographic borders that are defensible with much smaller populations. Because it turns out we're not going to be able to compensate for the violence of young men and the productive capacities of young men with technology. Because as rapidly as we develop a technology, within a couple hours or a couple days at the latest, the other side's provided a counter or even maybe got ahead. And that's another thing that's just been proven in the war in Ukraine and Russia. There's another reason why, one, we didn't want to use overwhelming firepower because the Russians would use nukes in their defense. They don't have an offense nuke strategy, and it's just not Russian nature, right? And probably what would have happened, just knowing the Russians as they are and the way they wage war, right? General Winter, they would have allowed Western forces into Russia itself and then nuked them inside Russia's borders,
Yeah, yeah,
right? Russia's huge. They can go
yeah,
east for a while, for 100 years. They don't,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah,
But more than likely, that's what Russia would have done. If we tried to use overwhelming force and broken through, et cetera, they would have sucked us all into Kursk or into somewhere else, and then you nuked it, and then not nuked the rest of the world, not taking the world to nuclear war. But when nuclear annihilated, and then you're going to have to go through nuclear fallout, region, et cetera. But anyways, point being is this: what's happening down underneath is vastly more fundamental things. It's also why the crazy young men are moving now because they have to try and collapse the world and their backers have to collapse the world or have to bring around this insanity, this insanocracy that they want because fundamental reality is seeping back in. And the fundamental reality is our populations are dramatically declining, and we have to go to borders that we can physically defend with smaller populations. And all of the, to your point, 90% of the make work stuff's going away because we just don't have the populations to do it. And so what's happening, that means a lot of this artificial oligarchic wealth is going to get wiped out. And so now it's a fight over who's going to get to hold what and who's going to, who gets what tangible, hard collateral assets and who doesn't. And who can radicalize or use young men to fight for them in that fight. Biology and demographics trump everything. Everything.
Let's let's just play devil's advocate because at this point I really have no idea. But let's say the Trump administration is aware of I think the general I don't know opinion of a decent number of people is like, yeah, there's the evil cabal and there seems to be some sort of counter cabal. Whichever one's dominating, I don't know. If the two even exist, I don't know. Are they just both, subgroups of the same whatever? But just for shits and giggles, let's say the Trump group, not I don't get wrapped up in the name Trump. That
Yeah, no, I got it.
faction.
I got it.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
got it.
yeah.
I got it.
Let's say
Yeah.
they don't want this to slide into whatever the psychopath, score counting oligarch demons want. How would you're President EM, and you're not going to come out and you can't make these statements because it's by definition we're talking about, covert, tertiopia, whatever the fuck war. How do you handle this right now? If you don't, because and the reason why as that and I always said I'm not being optimistic just to be like starry-eyed and optimistic. A lot of the times I'm optimistic because it's the only interesting outcome. It's very easy to say, how will the podcast fail? Well, it just, the subscribers won't grow, sponsors they don't jive with me, and I just keep at it. And after two, three, four, 5,000 episodes, I kind of realize like, hey, it was fun, but it's probably not enough to live off of, and then I go get a job. It's like why and then well why do I think about the optimistic version? Well, one, I'm biased, I want it to work, but two, I'm also more interested in the optimistic. I'm like, I don't know, maybe I meet somebody and they meet somebody and then there's a weird fucking turn of event. To me, it's just a more interesting story
Yeah,
is
yeah.
how I kind of view it. So we all whatever like the lowest entropy one, yeah, yeah, okay, we slip into civil war and it turns into World War III in the end, got it, okay, regardless of probabilities, you're Trump right now and you don't want that to happen. And whatever evidence you have that, this was intentional to set off XYZ, kill the moderate, what actions do you take to counter that or to keep it from slipping? Just for the
So,
curiosity of it.
yeah, no, it's a very, very astute and great question. And we're thinking through this,
Mhm.
verbalizing it in this conversation.
Yeah.
Um, I posted Clay Martin, our buddy Clay, my friend Clay. Um, he posted something yesterday, and I said that, responded with, you have to clear away all memory of the previous war to prepare yourself for the war you're now in.
Which can never happen and never has happened, but it's a good.
Well, you get rid of the vestiges of the regrets and all that other
Okay,
stuff
okay.
because you're now in another war and it's a different
We're
war.
not in GWAT, we're not in NOM, we're not.
Exactly.
Got it.
So, with respect to Trump can't fight this war. He's 80 years old, and he and his generation's ability to comprehend this war is impossible. What they can do is take off the plate. They can take off, they can remove the war that their generation had been setting up, which is World War III. And they're doing that, in every way possible, brilliantly, by the way. And the so that's the external war. The internal war that was waging was the lawfare and the unconstitutional courts and lower courts, etc. So his generation, and again, that's why it's not him, right? It's his generation are dismantling World War III right before our very eyes. This conversation Tom and I've had, and Alex and I, etc. Um, what they are also doing at the federal level, because that's all they can do, is restoring constitutionality in the courts. And it's brilliant and it's happening beautifully. That's all they can do.
And that's the Colossus
That's
supercomputer. The cost. I was
that's
looking
the
at that
closet.
thumbnail last
Yeah.
night. I just saw it last night. The constitutional Colossus computer. Yeah, the super
Yeah.
lawyer. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So now that needs to happen. The next fight is that needs to happen at the states levels, right? So states need to do this, these fights to restore constitutionality, restore original titles and deeds to land so they're not hypothecated and they're not sold off abroad, etc. All that stuff needs to happen. Um, the fight that is now rapidly approaching us that just kicked off in Utah is a fight that Vance and our generations have to fight. And that fight's right here. And I think, it was interesting that Vance went on Kirk's show yesterday and stated no unity with these people. That is a fundamental difference between Gen X millennial generation, older millennials, Gen Xers, and the boomer and silent generations.
Yeah. No, I was kind of shocked to because for years, guys like Dale have been saying on the play, like, stop fucking making peace with evil.
Yes. So our war now, our war now is here. It's at home. It's against those forces that have either already driven our young men insane or are now moving to radicalize our young men to destroy themselves in ethnic, cultural hatred wars. The disgust, destroy themselves by being driven to disgust. And there's a whole lot of reasons to be disgusted. I'm not taking away from that. And there is no making peace with evil. And I fundamentally agree with Vance says there is no unity with this. This is resentful malevolence, and it openly states its intentions. And we have to deal with it. It is time to stop being civil.
You know,
Period.
no, I was just running that through my head yesterday. I'm like, you can see in the past 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, you can see the president or the VP's role kind of coming out and being like, everybody chill the fuck out. Like,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
was
yeah,
horrific. And I get
yeah.
that. But then you also get to a point where it's accelerating, accelerating. The last 8, 4, 2 years have been so insane that at a certain point, do you go, that's no longer what the doctor orders. The doctor's now saying, if you don't stop this, in a couple of years, you're going to yearn for the days of the occasional podcaster getting shot.
So the frat boys get into the bar. Me and my boys come. We have a conversation with them. And
You're
we're
going to wish you,
polite and
yeah,
we're
you,
cool. We're strong, we're firm, but we're polite, we're cool. And at some point, though, they're not hearing, they're not listening, they're causing problems. They're emboldened because last
because
weekend they got away with it with a different crew.
no one's
And
punching him in the
it's
face.
nobody's punch. And so at some point, though, there's a transition. And my boys and I don't even have to say anything. They just, it's a look, right? You know it. You've been there. They come forward, and it's like, okay, this is going down. And something you said, people just kind of pull away. We don't want the damage to go too far. We don't want it to spill over, but this is going down. If we can get it outside, great. If we can't, it's going to happen right here. Why? Because if we don't take this on and fight, these guys are going to hurt some people, and maybe some guns and knives are going to get drawn, and some people that shouldn't be killed are going to get killed or hurt.
And the the nuanced gray area is if you're working at the bar, and it's just some random weekend, you don't go, we got to kick their ass or this is going to happen again. If everything is relatively good over the, previous whatever time semester,
Yeah.
yeah, you're probably not like we need to beat the shit out of this guy. You're probably
Yeah.
like, hey, remove, just remove. You got to go, and hey, we're good.
Yeah.
But if it's happening Thursday, Friday, Saturday, every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then not only is it happening every weekend, but every weekend it's provably getting a little more people. A bottle was broken, a stool was chipped.
Yeah.
After a while, after you're 30 weekends into it, you gotta have to start going like, hey, we did try the peaceful thing. This isn't a lack of desire to do the olive branch. Now I'm at a point where this is my business. And then
Correct.
beyond that, I'm also not fucking dying for this bar, right? Or I am dying
Well,
for the bar. My
but it's
family lives above,
also, I like
whatever.
the patrons. I like the people. I like the environment. This is my place.
And
This
so
is
I
my
want to
hangout.
continue this. And so
Yeah.
now what is the lesser of
Yeah.
evils? It's to remove
Yeah.
the thing that's trying to prevent this from existing further.
So as you know, having been a frat boy, something happens. I've never been in a fraternity. I've fought a bunch of them. Um, shit gets said in the frat. Some kid gets checked, some guy gets checked, some guy gets forced out. Frat brothers doing frat brother shit, and I can't completely fault them for that. They're being loyal to their brothers. And now beef's there between the frat house and the bar staff. And at some point, something's going to go down. And you're going to, generally in college towns is where I worked, right? So when I was younger and then when I was less younger, um, uh, you would get word. Somebody would tell you. Somebody would usually come and say, "It's like these guys are coming Friday. They're all riled up, and they're normally hammered before they even get there, right? Because they've been getting that liquid courage, and sometimes you'd be able to stop them outside. The doorman would see the first one, and he'd call, and then we all make sure they don't get inside, and sometimes maybe, they get distracted or whatever. Sometimes they drink too much before they got there. So it was like,
Fucking, yeah,
wasn't going to be much of a fight anyways. And then sometimes they were, you know, not quite liquored up enough. And then sometimes they're right in the zone, right? And then you have a throwdown out in the parking lot and cops show up and, all of it. Or sometimes you didn't get word of it and they get inside. And the next thing you know, there's 15 of them and there's only five of you. And so then you're trying to, slowly, carefully piece them apart and get one out or two out or whatever. And then it goes down. And then the cops show, and then everybody gets out and the lights come on, the cops show up. And, you know, um, the worst ones, though, were kind of like this Charlie Kirk thing. The worst ones were where the guy didn't get the support of his brothers. He's still really pissed. And so he comes in with a knife or a gun.
and we had those where there's the loyalty and there's like a threshold of loyalty.
Yeah.
But then, as I've discussed, there was also times where it was like this one dude is fucking it up for everybody. Hey
Yeah.
guys, you can get this guy's back. It's gonna result in like this frat's over. And then that's
Well,
where you
you
have
lived it
the,
yourself.
well,
You were that
exactly,
guy.
right? I
Yeah,
was
yeah,
that
yeah.
guy, right?
Yeah.
And I look at that, and yeah, no, and I not removed, but essentially, because I was able to pay my way out of it through my
Yeah,
savings.
yeah,
But
yeah,
my point is so that does exist, and that's not entirely uncommon. We have such a crazy person to go, we'll remove him.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
But so I look back at like the fraternity I was in, and it's like, well, let's walk this out. So that didn't happen. Obviously, I transferred, and then like, but things got worse because like the next year, I think one of my friends did like a Mike Tyson. He bit the ear off some kid at a bar, and I'm not even kidding. To the fraternity next door, other dude pulled out a fucking gun, and I guess it wasn't loaded, but he was hammered. And he was pulling. It was empty.
yeah,
Um, fucking cops came. The whole thing. It was no. So now it was no longer fraternity. Now there's league, right? So that goes on. There was like a police investigation. And by then I had transferred, but I'm like still following this. Like, what the fuck? Fuck, like old sheriff comes in, old dude. Turns out he had been an alumni of our frat from like 50 years ago, and he had never said anything. And he came in and was like, "I'm gonna put this under the rug." They all cheered, blah blah blah.
yeah,
Okay, but that fraternity had been there since like the 50s, so this is now like 2011. Okay, and it had been getting progressively crazier for like the previous 10, 15 years. I leave and I paid my way out of it, but there's still no like retribution. There's still no evening
uh,
of the plateau.
retaliation. Yeah.
The two fraternities where the kid got his ear bit off, like the school put up like a wall or something, but nothing. There was really still no justice. And I'm saying as somebody that was in the fraternity. Sheriff comes over, basically goes, "I'm going to push this under the rug." A couple more years go by. It gets so progressively worse, though, that the fraternity I was in was eventually kicked off campus, chapter dissolved, house bulldozed, literally turned into a parking lot. So on a long enough timeline, and it was even longer than a single college. The craziness happened over like
Oh
15
yeah. Oh
years
yeah.
on a long enough timeline. And if you're in it, you go, "Oh, it's still not happening. We keep getting away from it." But the things we're getting away from are bigger and bigger. It's the dean is mad at, or it's the bar owners are mad at us. Then the dean's mad at us. Now the police are involved. Now the sheriff is doing us a favor. Well, eventually, I don't know what the final thing was that went, but it was so egregious because no one had been punched in the fucking face that the thing was removed. We can now apply that to a country. At what point do you go, "Well, we keep getting away with it,"
Well,
and
it's
then it gets
not
bulldozed?
it's not just getting away with it. What the reason it escalates is
Well, it's
because
because there
that
was, yeah,
well, it's a status hierarchy. So and so did this crazy insane thing, didn't get checked. If I'm going to have status,
yeah,
that type of status, I got to go do something even crazier. That's what happens. And it escalates and it escalates and it escalates until people start getting, until it gets, just eradicated or people die.
yeah,
Right. And so this stuff that just happened in Utah, that's a status hierarchy. It's a fucked up one. It's insane, but it's a status hierarchy and it's going to go further. And that was just one tiny little, people think that's the pinnacle. Oh, no, 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 no. That was just the beginning of the game. So to the question you asked, back to the boomers and the few silents is still around. Some of the old Xers got to take World War III and, you know, um, the complete infiltration of our country with foreigners off the table. That's their conflict to fight because that was their generation who did that shit. The Xers and millennials have got to lead some of the younger millennials and older Zoomers in removing this threat, this radicalization of young men, this insanity that has been fed into young men to where there's nothing left for them but to just kill. And somewhere in there, and unfortunately, they're in that place. There's no you do not de-radicalize somebody. It's impossible. So that's the fight, and it's going to get all, and it's oligarchs backing it and supporting it because they think they're going to come out and advantage the county or state or national level, whatever the hell it is. So that oligarch war isn't going to start. If the international oligarchs aren't going to go to war, it doesn't mean the national oligarchs aren't going to, because they're looking at their entire world and all of, 90% of their wealth getting wiped out. Why? Because of population decline. And because they got no young men that'll be loyal to stand and fight for them, because what have you done to young men? They have nothing and no chance for nothing. And you've told them that they were these evil, malevolent things from the time they were little boys. You hopped them up on fucking drugs from the time they were little boys. People need to understand something, man. What's about to happen and what just happened, what just started in this country is young men are going to force themselves to be heard. And I just did a meme on this earlier. The way in which historically young men are in these impossible situations, force themselves to be heard, is targeted killing.
hmm.
Very clever. Not this burning down cities and all. That's lowbrow stuff. When you got middle class and lower upper class kids that are just nothing, they got nothing, they're ruined, they're destroyed. These are smart kids.
I'm gonna say these are,
These are smart kids who know how to hurt the system because they know the system. They know their parents. They know the regime. That's our fight. And the thing is, and they're going to throw this other ethnic fight at us, and they're going to throw the Islam shit and the cartels and all of that. That's the oligarch stuff. We're going to have to deal with that too. But inside of that, we're going to have to deal with this, and Rudyard at What If Altist has been talking about this. Steph Boyd at Uber Boyo has been talking about this for years. And these are Zoomers, and nobody was listening. They've been putting videos out. Brilliant. Nobody's listening. Shit just went down in Utah. Nobody's still listening. They're still running down the trans, the furry, all the shit that doesn't matter. None of it matters, right? And all the little gamer things and the etchings on that. That's all distraction. Where we are is there's a subset of American young men, middle class, upper middle class, lower upper class, who are going to be heard no matter what. And the only way for that to happen, we just saw, is murder and violence. This isn't about commies and conservative. This isn't about left and right. This isn't about any of those things. Now, the ones who are secretly backing and funding, to your point, right? The various platform patsy running people, they want us all focusing on all that stuff because we're not looking at how are they using this weaponized, radicalized young men to do what? What impact the battle space? How? Kill who for what reasons? Why did they kill the Kennedys? Because they were trying to undo the CIA and the mafia's connection to the CIA that was formally launched in 1941 as Operation Underworld and instantiated in 1947 formally. That's why they were killed. Why was Charlie Kirk just killed? Because he was a moderate. And two things. Charlie Kirk would have talked to young men and kept them from being radicalized such that they go to this disgust ethnic cleansing. And Charlie Kirk was having conversations with people already to try and help some of these young men that had been, and some young women, but really young men had been driven to this insanity place to back off the ledge, to come back. And his way was Christ. And I get it. I'm not a Christian, but
Sure,
I
yeah,
get, right, that Christ is a path of redemption. I get it.
sure,
There's
yeah,
redemption in pagans, in the old Norse system too.
yeah, sure.
There's a reason we didn't just kill Loki, right? We didn't just kill Loki because even Loki needed the right to redemption.
Yeah.
Now we had to imprison him sometimes and had to, prevent his ability to do certain things. But even in Norse tradition, right, which is also ancient Greek tradition, ancient Greek pantheon and Norse Scandinavian is the same, came from the same root. But point being is, even in our traditions, we don't have a Christ figure, but even in our traditions, redemption is absolutely essential, even for those who've been horribly radicalized and broken, etc. And
Well,
Charlie Kirk was the one voice to both of those. Don't go into ethnic hatred and slaughter.
don't
And
spiral, don't.
here's a path for you young men who have been totally radicalized and broken and driven insane. Here's a path for you back to us, to men, to the world of men. There is a redemption path even for you, and that's why they had to kill him.
I saw a clip of him the other day where this dude at one of the things with the microphone, he's just this commie looking, whatever, like neon hair. He's got like an anarchy shirt on. And
It's
you
the
can tell,
poison frog
yeah,
look.
he just comes in and
Yeah,
you just
yeah,
tell he's fucking angry. And
yeah.
he's like removing DEI from the curriculum is censorship. And Charlie's like, no, censorship is like what, you can say and you do have the right to say, but this is a curriculum of a public school that's voted on. And the other guy's like, well, don't the kid's like, doesn't the professor have the right to say this? And Charlie was like, yes, but not on payroll, not as part of curriculum. He's like, for instance, what if I decided that we should teach classes that say the Holocaust didn't happen? He's like, do I have the right to say that? And the comic kid's like, yeah. He's like, if I'm at a public school, am I entitled to that if it's voted on? And the kid, who just looks exactly like you'd suspect him to, he stops and he goes, "That's actually a really good point. Thank you." And Charlie goes, "Thank you." And you listen to him, and the kid goes like, "All right." And you just see him, and like that doesn't mean that the kid's a conservative now, but you just see this like Charlie's not like,
No.
see you fucking idiot. He goes,
But
thank
he's
you.
given him a thread that maybe the kid can pull on and redeem
And he did, and he
himself.
goes, thank you. And Charlie, and
Yeah.
he goes, yeah, the kid goes, I never thought about that. Thank you. And then Charlie goes, thank you. And they both kind of smile, and then you go,
Yeah.
yeah, that's definitely what you want to kill if you're evil.
Charlie was the big brother.
Yeah.
Charlie was the big brother, and they had to kill the big brother. Because what does the big brother do in a family? Big brother is the one, and again, I'm
Mediate,
terribly sorry
yeah.
for your loss. And I had to be the big brother of mine, even though technically I had one, but he didn't grow up with us. Um, what does big brother do when the little brother does something stupid, or little brother's going down a bad pathway, or little brother's done something that shouldn't have done? The big brother's got to be the one that helps set him, gives him the peace, the little thing, because he knows his little brother, and he's got to give him that little thing that'll get in there, right? Sometimes you got to smack the shit out of him too, just to be
Sure.
quite frank. But he puts that little thing in there, so the little brother goes, "Oh."
Yeah.
And you do that several times as the older brother, and the younger brother goes down a whole different pathway than what he was being led down. Charlie Kirk was the big brother. They just killed the older brother for a whole generation. Well, more than one generation, right?
It is just it's completely like unrelated to the rest of this comic, just as like
Mm,
an emotional assertion. God, it's so fucking sad. Like, it's just sad. And I get the whole, yeah, a million people die. I get it, and shootings happen. I know all that, blah, blah, blah.
they don't die like this.
But even if they
Yeah,
did, it's like
yeah,
here's the other thing. People are like, people are killed every day. I'm like, that can also be sad. Like your heart, you can apply your heart to everything. You go, well, what about
yeah.
everybody that died in Gaza today? You can go, that's also sad. Like
Yes,
it's okay for it to all be sad.
yes.
Yeah, it's fucking, jeez. I mean,
So here we're gonna have to do what we have to do. That's just the way it is. We're forced to it. There's
yeah.
no other option, right? If we don't listen to Clausewitz and we don't listen to Kennedy, this goes to just slaughter, and we lose all of our young men, and we lose, and even the oligarchs lose everything, because without young men, you cannot defend your assets, you cannot defend the land, and you have nothing. So we men who have this thing forced upon us need to keep two things in mind that Charlie Kirk and Christ and the Norse, all fundamental, not fundamental, but all belief systems that we adhere to that are the core of our civilization. And yes, North Scandinavian paganism and Christianity are Western civilization. You don't have one without the other, at least in Western Europe and the the British Isles and the English speaking world. But the point being is this: we have to do what we have to do, period. And a lot of people are going to die, sadly, ours and theirs. And whatever the hell theirs is right now, we don't even know. We don't even quite know what ours are yet. But it is, you know, the sane versus the insane. That's probably the easiest way. At the same time, what we need to do, or we lose ourselves as well, is we have to allow for redemption. Those that have been led down the wrong path, the bad path, the ones that have been driven insane, the ones that have, you know, been clouded and confused by lies and deceptions upon lies and deceptions for decades, need to have the chance to redeem themselves. And that's hard. That's not easy. And that's not because the community is trying to punish them. It's because the community needs to be able to trust them. So hard work is coming. It's already started. But in that, we need to not go too far, right? So restraint. And we need to allow for redemption. But again, redemption is the hardest thing to earn because it has to be real. And that means the individual has to go through a fundamental neurological, biophysiological change that only they can put themselves through.
So there's the opportunity for it to be good
Yes,
if people go through that. I mean,
yes.
when I started the podcast, I realized I had to, again, stop staying up all night, stop being a fat fuck, blah blah blah. And it was a path to redemption, and it kind of got me back on track. No one could ever make me do it. That I've seen doctors for years that were trying to help me, and I didn't want it because I was fucking angry at, whatever, my brother. And I would say that, something good has come out of it. Now, that doesn't mean that good always happens. Actually, I would say
Correct.
statistically, most of the time, it
Correct.
doesn't turn good. It probably turns to
Correct.
suicide, drug abuse, murder, whatever.
Yes.
But if you can do the path to redemption, it can be overwhelmingly good. So there does seem to be a chance for good.
Yes.
And I don't know who or how, and I'm not trying to sound like some fucking hippie, but it's a pressure, it's a like a atmospheric chamber right now, and it's like, different things can happen. You can be forced into different shapes, you can become different shapes, and I don't know. I mean, I suppose that's where free will comes in. But that's also, I mean, is redemption not the best
Uh,
execution of free will? Is that like you,
so,
you can change?
so interesting philosophic question. Okay. And it makes me think of something that needs to be said. One, if we think that the only path to redemption and are making it through this fight is Christianity, we will fail
Well, it's not.
because there are a
Can't be.
large number of us that are not Christians and never going to be Christians. But we are staunch defenders of our society, our civilization, our people, our culture, everything, right?
Yeah, no,
Our
you can't. You
history, our
can't
shared
hang. You can't
history.
hang it on one religion. One of my
You
best
can't.
friends at Rumble,
Yeah.
Siraj, he's Muslim. I'm Christian. He's one of my best friends and one of like the best people I know. And there's never even
Yeah.
been a moment of friction between us because
Yeah.
it can't be. It
Yeah.
can't be.
So the Abrahamic religions are not the path back for everybody. It's not. Now,
No,
for
it's a
some, it is an
scaffolding that some
option.
of us use, and it's a
That's
scaffolding that
exactly
others
right.
don't.
And so, great. There's some others. So that's one thing. The other piece is that the whole free will thing, again, I'm not certain about. I don't know that it's as much about free will. I suspect the initiation of it is that people around us that have, of status that we respect see something in us. And they recognize that if we can find ourselves and develop ourselves down a different pathway, that we can be of value to the community. It doesn't, this path of redemption doesn't just start in the individual. It starts, and I'm going to give you an example. I knew I knew a lot of Hell's Angels when I was young, close. Right, let's just say that. And I've known, gangbangers and, those guys as well. Some of the best human beings I've ever known in my life were guys that used to live in that life and genuinely, most of them had gone to prison,
Yeah,
right? A couple of them haven't. Actually, I know one ex-girlfriend, he wasn't Hell's Angels, but I mean, he was major, major drug dealer, not dealer, but distributor for the bad guy, for the big bad guys. He and one other guy, they didn't go to prison ever, but somewhere in their life, they realized I'm not doing the right thing. I'm harming people. And they set about changing, and it took years, and then they had to survive their, but point being is this, some of the greatest human beings, I mean, like legitimate good men you'll ever meet, strong, capable, but good men, were former, hardcore violent criminals.
sure.
And Christianity for some got them, some was, but the one common thread for every one of them is that there were people in their network that said, "What are you doing?
Yeah,
There's another path. I see something else in you." And so that's something, they have to do it, right? The individual has to do it. Nobody else, as in your own path, right? You got to do the work. But without that, hey, what are you doing? I see this in you. And they can say it to you in such a way you can see it yourself. Without that, there's no impetus for somebody to just turn around and make themselves a good person in the community if the community doesn't see something worthy in them to allow them the redemption, the hard redemption path. So I'm not so certain it's free will. I think it's more A man, in this case, a man comes along who's solid and respected and says, "Hey, what are you doing?"
Was that guy exercising free will?
Who knows? I
I was
don't
gonna say by
know.
transitive property, but whatever, regardless,
Yeah, I have no
is no, but
idea.
what
Yeah.
that is when someone sees you and goes, "What are you doing?" What that also is you know, is that's a popping of the bubble of self-hatred, and I never understood
In
self-hatred.
isolation,
Yeah,
in self-isolation. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I never
Yeah,
understood
sorry.
like self-hatred growing because
Yeah,
I just conflated. I just went, oh, that's discipline. No, that would get me to work
yeah,
out. That would get me to diet and
yeah,
exercise and do well in school and whatever. And then after my brother died, and then for like 4 years, I go, oh, that's self-hatred. That's not. It's not
mm,
useful. It's not productive. Oh, this is
destructive.
detrimental, and it's
Yeah,
going to bad. So when somebody points something out in you that even if it's like, hey, there's a percentage chance that this could work, what they're
yeah,
really doing is making or showing you something about you that they look at as a positive, and they're not blowing smoke up your ass and just saying, hey, buddy, you're a good guy. They say
yeah,
something in you that
yeah,
is that is you identify that and you go,
yeah.
well, I guess that isn't that bad. And if you can look at that, that alone makes you stop thinking, oh, I'm pure fucking evil. And it was just like,
Yes.
oh, and for me, it was as
Yeah.
simply as like, hey, man, you really can talk to anybody about anything. And it was just like, well, maybe that's something to move forward. Yeah.
I was on a path to be dead by 30. That was just
Oh, no, I should be.
right. I was on a path, but at a few points in my life when I was younger, mostly in the army, the short stint I had in the army early on, but in a couple other areas, some man that I knew or respected would say, "What are you doing?
Yeah.
Why aren't you doing that?" Some part about me, some capability or skill, like, why aren't you developing that? Why aren't you doing that? And maybe they'd chewed me out about something else I'd been stupid and done stupid shit at, right? But at a few points in my life, there've been probably three or four across my life where somebody came and said, "What are you doing?
Yeah.
Look at that in yourself. Why don't you try and use that more?" Right. And then one of them is my adopted father when I was, I don't know, probably 17 years old. Right. And I was just self-destructive. I wasn't doing criminal stuff and I
Sure.
wasn't doing drugs or anything like that. I hated all that stuff because I'd seen it destroy my kid brother. Right. Um, but I was just pushing life to the boundaries. And, so that's the point I'm getting at, right? Is that one, we're going to have to fight, we're going to have to kill, and we're going to do a whole bunch of stuff. The thing that we are really fighting over, though, is the future of our young men. Everything else is artificial. Everything else is a derivative. Everything else is an artificial construct on top of young men, built on top of the violent capacities and the ability to channel and shape the violent capacities of young men. Everything else is artificial. What the fight that we are now heading into as populations are collapsing, as we have to pull back to borders that can be defended with smaller populations, which is something pre-World War I posture, maybe even further back with smaller populations. What we are fighting out right now is the soul and heart and future of our young men. It's that simple. Now, it's not as simple as in execution, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But in its, and this is why they killed Charlie Kirk, because he was one of the forefront, one of those on the forefront of this battle, the battle of our time. We must preserve and I'm going to say something people again can get pissed off all they want and hate me for it, etc. Um, and take it in or out of context. I don't care. Young women are not the asset of the lands. They can't stand and fight and defend it. The young men are. And you can't import young men. History's shown again and again and again. You
No.
can't import young men from other parts of the world who will stand in to fight for that land and the young and protect the women. You can replace the women with women from other lands. That's been done numerous times. So this whole concept and idea of what the real asset and value is has been intentionally flipped upside down. Young men are the only, and the violent capacities and the ability to channel that to protect the land, to defend the land, that the women are on, that the children are on, that this provides for, etc. That's all been confused and thrown, distracted and distorted and all this other stuff. Truth of the matter is, the only real asset is the violent capacities of young men. And we are in a fight now to preserve as many of our young men as we can so we can preserve everything else that we can preserve. And no AI ain't going to
Yeah.
compensate, and frickin' drones aren't going to compensate. We just lost 2 million Slavs in 3 years, and they weren't even going all in. The Russians were as restrained as they could possibly be because that's their people. Could have been much higher numbers.
Yeah, I was trying to think of something to say, but I think that might be a good point to cap this.
Go get some coffee.
I don't really have anything to add. Not like fuck this, but more as like I think I just kind of need to digest this. Sometimes I'll reach a part in the show where I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, now I just need to think about this. Like there's nothing else to say.
It's taken me years to get to this understanding,
Yeah,
Tommy. And but what we just saw in Utah with the assassination of Charlie Kirk is that there is a subset of our young men we've lost,
sure. Undeniable.
that we've
It's not
lost,
fear
and
mongering. It's
they're
HD video.
available, right? They're available to be used to commit violence against us and our good men, and that's a failing on our part because we were so busy chasing wealth and money and power and fame and all this other stuff, we didn't realize that the only real asset is young men. And we could have been connecting with our young men all the time, the whole time. Now we're going to have to fight some of them. And not just our own young men, but other people's young men.
We'll wrap it up with one of my favorite quotes from I think it's Mark Manson, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. It's all right book. But there's one line from it that I love, and it's I've probably said it to you before that it's everything is your responsibility, but it's not your fault. It is not your fault if a drunk driver
Yeah.
debones you.
Yeah.
That's not your fault. It's a
Yeah.
responsibility that you got to deal with. Even if you get $100 million
Yeah. Yeah.
payout,
Yeah.
you got to go fucking learn to walk again. And I think what he says in the book is somebody knocks on your door and you open it, no one's there, and it's a basket with a baby. He goes, that is not your fault. It is your responsibility. Even if it's just
Yes.
calling the police and you wipe
Yes.
your hands from it, even if it's you take the child in and you raise it for 18 years, I think he goes, and even if you feed it to a pit bull, you still have to make up that decision. But and that helped me a lot when it really, because it helped me, it was like, it's not my fault my brother died.
Correct.
It's also no one else's fault, which means it's my responsibility. So that's why, even with the
Yes.
show, I always just go, it's my responsibility. And
Yes.
I think that, as a general theme is probably an important thing to remember right now. Well, I didn't fucking do this. I was born in 1990. I was playing Nintendo, and now
Yeah.
there's a ninth gen oligarchy war. And it's no, correct, Tommy. It's kind of not your fault, dude. You had braces and, hadn't even jerked off yet when 9/11 happened. Like, oh, hey, Tommy, I'll give it to you. GWAP wasn't your fault,
Yeah.
but you're 35 years old. It is your responsibility. You do live here.
Yes.
Even if your
Yes.
responsibility is, hey, kill yourself, I don't want to be part of it. That's a choice you can make. Not a good one, but it's a choice you can make. It is your responsibility. And so
Yes.
whatever it is, be it doing podcasts or you writing or whoever doing, some people might go, the best thing I can do right now is be a good father. Like, and that might be it. That might be what you do in
Yes.
your one
Yes.
cell of the 50 trillion cells of the organism. Like, yeah, you might just be a good dad and raise a good dude. That's not a bad thing. Might be a good mom, but it is our responsibility. Even if it's fucked,
Yes.
it is our
Yes.
responsibility. And that's
That's
just,
the eternal war,
yeah, it's in
right?
front. It just is what it is. It's in front of
Yeah.
us. It's our
Yeah.
responsibility.
Yeah.
All right. We'll wrap this shit.
All right.
Thank you for doing this on short notice, as always.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Everybody go in the
Awesome.
description, grab his books, go into the Twitter, go into what else am I missing? Twitter, YouTube, books,
Substack.
Substack. I thought you
Substack.
had a
Yeah.
Substack. I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't plug it earlier. Let me make sure I have that in the
Yeah.
description right now before we leave it.
emburlingame.substack.com.
Just make sure I have it.
People should go into the Asrome Burns novel that I'm serializing because I go into all this stuff in great detail, hopefully in an interesting story that goes back 800 years.
I have your Twitter, but not your Substack. Let me make sure. Burlingame.
.substack.com.
Let me just make sure because once I have a guest on, and
Hmm.
once I have the description,
Cut and paste.
it is
Copy
there
paste
for
the baby.
it is there forever. Sometimes I'll have a guest on. I'll be like, are you still running this?" They're like, I shut that business down in 2021." I'm like, "Oh fuck." So it's yeah, it's all right. I'll make sure it's in the copy paste Substack. There we go. Yeah, be up tomorrow. Probably upload the Spotify like now if you want. Uh,
Awesome. Yeah.
blah 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 blah. Yeah, so yeah,
All right, Tom. You have a great day, man.
you as well, brother. Thank you so
All right.
much, guys. Thank you for
Yep.
watching. Take care, everybody.